the 3rd of November 2022, and as you can see, I am in the darkness again, thanks to Eskom, thanks to load shedding, but you get used to it. In this Skidmark I want to talk a little bit about Donbas and Kiev. The past 3 weeks the Russians have been bombing the electrical infrastructure of Ukraine. And there's so many articles that appear where the Western media want to tell us and show us how the people in Kiev is now suffering. They've got no electricity and they've got no, they don't have water and they're going to freeze. And yeah, as I'm talking to you, I'm going to show you some images of what the Ukraine has been doing to the Donbas for 8 years. And that first picture, we all know it by now well, that's the Crimea Bridge, the cursed bridge that has been bombed. And then there you have bombing of Donetsk city, and there is some more private homes that has been bombed, and that is how they operated. And for 8 years the people in the Donbas had to live with these things daily. They were daily bombarded, and it was civilian infrastructure, schools, hospitals, clinics, marketplaces, private homes, blocks of flats, and it was just relentless. Never military targets, all the time, relentlessly bombing the civilian targets. And they just carried on and on and on and on. So the people in the Donbas, they had to endure that. 15,000 people dead in 8 years. Think about that. 15,000 people killed in the Donbas by the Ukraine military. And then I've got this image for you, and you should look carefully. The Crimea power station before 2014 and after returning back to Russia in 2014. Everything is better at home. Now there you can see it was that power plant, and look how that thing has been upgraded and modernized. And I must say, I've seen many articles of people that said that during that, when the Russians took Crimea in 2014, they gave all the people that wanted to go back to the Ukraine, they gave them the opportunity to go. And when the professional guys in the hospitals and the teachers and so saw what the salaries will be of the professionals in Russia, more than 90% of those Ukrainians decided, no, they're not going to go, they're going to stay in Crimea. And that is not talking. I've seen videos about it, I've heard people talk about that. So, yeah, we in the West have got a warped idea of what really is going on in Russia. We don't have, but you can see on this image. That is how it works. And I saw another interview that Patrick Lancaster did where he was talking in Mariupol to people. They were standing in front of a clinic that was a new clinic that the Russians built there. And that person told him straight, we've never seen things like this. The pavements, the streets were never repaired by Ukrainian government here. So you have to rethink your attitude about the Russians. And then here's some more Donbas relatives, and now look at that. That is an administration building. Why? And then look at this. A kindergarten, a library, and 14 private houses. That's what they do. But now the Western media is giving us all the sob stories about the people in Kiev are without power, and they are going to get cold. But they didn't care about that when they were doing the same to Donbas. Look at this one. Ukrainians could freeze to death this winter, mayor of Kiev. Many Ukrainians could freeze to death in the coming months unless the West helps them to cope with the looming crisis due to Russian strikes on the nation's energy and infrastructure. Now the West must help due to the Russian strike. Where was the West when the people in the Donbas had to endure all those bombings? Where were they? You know where were they? The same as they're doing now, arming the Ukraine. And then look at this sick fuck up. I saw the video, I didn't want to put the video on here. I wrote to you here about the phenomenon Ukrainianness. Here is another phenomenon Ukrainianness. Ukrainian humor on the Ukrainian channel Zarada. How to cook Ukrainian borscht. The key is to have the right ingredients. Meat should be used only from mobilized Russians and in black bags. How's that? And they show it on TV. That man is now going to cook a meal. And he's got a hand in a plastic bag. They're sick fuckers, these men. And some more nighttime shots in Kiev. Lekker, look at it, it looks nice. This is also, look at this. Really looks cool and dark. I hope they enjoy it. This is what the Donbass had to endure. And then there's this thing. The German Junge Welt writes that the world has become a hostage to Biden's stupidity and Zelensky's Napoleon complex. Not a day goes by without a Russian official declaring his country's readiness to negotiate an end to the war in Ukraine. And the reaction of the Western side is as follows. Well, look, the sanctions and our support for Ukraine work. Whoever makes peace now is encouraging Putin to future conquests. The danger of escalation, even to a nuclear exchange, is actually greater today than it was in 1962 at the height of the Cuban Missile Crisis. The Biden administration says it's working to avoid World War III, but at the same time arms Ukraine to the limit, so the road to ruin is assured. Does the US president use common sense? But here is the real Russian roulette. Zelensky. A negotiated peace would be his political and possibly physical end. He plays with the world and the West allows him. And that is so true, and we see it. But if you look at his latest interviews and so forth, the guy is panicking. And then here, the former press secretary of Zelensky, Mendel, who a couple of years ago justified the killing of Ukrainian civilians in Donetsk by provocation of Russian troops, now has no electricity, water or heating in her apartment. Now she feels what those people had to endure in the Donbass. And I hope she enjoys it. And then there's this Ukrainian soldier that was captured in the Donbass, and he tells of all those things that were happening to them. Captured militants of the Ukrainian army tell all about how their own commanders threw them out to die with neither training nor mercy, as they even reported facing brutal threats of torture from their commanders themselves, leaving them to wonder if it really is their Russian-led opponents on the battlefield that were really the ones likely to send them to slaughter? Good question. And then we get to this one and another. I just laugh when I read these things. Vitaly Klitschko's plea to the West. Send blankets and generators or we'll freeze to death. Fuck. They get enough money. Why don't they buy their own blankets and generators? They should have known this shit is going to hit them when they blasted that bridge in Crimea. And there was a lot of talk about the British involvement in that attack on Sevastopol, on the fleet there in Sevastopol with the drones. And the Russians knew exactly where the command and control center was, from where the British was orchestrating that attack. If you look on your screen now, there you will see it. That is what is left of that command and control center. And then this is how nice and democratic Zelensky and his cabal is. The SBU took on the former students of Russian universities. Communities of Ukrainian nationalists published personal data of Ukrainian students who graduated from Russian universities. According to the country 5 data. It is downloaded from open databases and unprotected archives. Particular attention is paid to citizens of Ukraine who graduated from Donetsk and Lugansk universities. Former students may face criminal prosecution in Ukraine. How is that? That is what you Western taxpayers are paying. Your governments are giving that money that they take from you in tax. They're giving it to Zelensky to do this type of thing to his own citizens. And this one was quite shocking. Regarding the affiliation of the one shot down with manpads in the area of NP, the controversial Mi-8 is believed to be a former UN aircraft, now part of the armed forces of Ukraine. Now what I want to know is how the fuck does a UN helicopter become part of the Ukraine military? And then we've got this, to arm or to alarm. Arms supply to Ukraine ending up in criminal hands. A top Helsinki investigator has warned that criminals in Finland and other European states have been obtaining weaponry that was supposed to go to the Ukrainian military. Russia has repeatedly warned that the Western arms could end up in the hands of terrorists, as such weapons have been found for sale on the darknet. Meanwhile, the US has openly acknowledged that it can't control where the supplies end up. Now that should make you feel comfortable in Europe and sleep well. And then we get to this. Now, you know that Putin has cancelled the Russian participation in the grain deal, and they're now back on. The grain deal is now back on again. But listen to this. A very good illustration of the state of affairs in Ukraine. The video was made by the Ukrainian investigative authorities. A military helicopter found at the Odessa customs was ready to be smuggled out of the country. And now think about how easy it is to smuggle any other military equipment out of Ukraine, especially if it's smaller. Most of the contraband ends up in the EU, where it moves almost freely between countries and is sold to the best bidder. I wonder who's buying, don't you? And how does this affect the criminal situation in the EU? We do not forget that the EU countries are sending weapons to Ukraine. And where will these weapons end up? Good question. And then this was something I am keeping my eyes wide open to see if I can find more confirmation of this. Breaking news. Local Ukrainian partisans are rising up against the corrupt Kiev regime of Zelensky. Now, they say they're rising up. I think they're at this point in time just getting together. I see no messages, no articles, no posts on Telegram, nothing. Only this one. And then there's this. A monument at mass grave of 54,000 Jewish men, women and children murdered by Germans, Romanians and Ukrainians near Bogdanovka. And look how that monument has been defiled by swastika signs. Those Ukrainians are bad news. And then I'm going to end this one with this cartoon. You can take a look at this cartoon. And then you ask yourself, is it true or is it false? You've got the American there, and he's got the Zelensky on, as a puppet, and he's got the EU dog, NATO dog on a leash, and look at all those parts from the Donbas, and the Russian soldier is shooting that guy with a knife there, and on the Russian sits a dove, a peace dove. But nothing of that will happen because the Americans don't want peace, they don't want to negotiate a settlement, they just want to pump weapons in there. And I've seen a few very disturbing articles today. I don't know how the West is going to get out of this mess without losing face big time, because it is clear the West is running out of money and they're running out of weapons. You see now Biden has promised on fancy anti-drone contraptions, but for delivery late 2023. By 2023, I don't think there's going to be a Ukraine left. But let's see where it goes. Please hit a like, and subscribe, and share the thing. And thank you for your support.